A scientist who just returned from the country's 32nd Antarctic expedition said they have discovered the biggest canyon on Earth during polar research.
The camera shakes. Alarms scream in the background. A scientist's voice, barely audible over the chaos, whispers something in Mandarin that roughly translates to, "It's responding." Then the screen explodes in white light, and the footage cuts to black. That 47-second video clip vanished from the internet within hours. Every copy, every upload, every share, deleted, gone. But not before thousands of people downloaded it, archived it, and started asking the one question that would send shockwaves through the scientific community. What did China find under 4 kilometers of Antarctic ice that was worth erasing from existence?
China's icebreaker Xulong has arrived in the Antarctic ice dome.
The official story? A natural gas release. A simple geological event. Nothing to see here, move along. But the unofficial story, the one whispered in research labs, debated on encrypted forums, and analyzed frame by independent investigators, tells us something entirely different. Something that suggests we've been wrong about Antarctica all along.
Antarctica's Thwaites Glacier, ominously known as the Doomsday Glacier, is showing accelerating signs of structural failures.
Because what if the coldest, most remote, most lifeless place on our planet has been hiding the one discovery that could rewrite human history? And what if that discovery just woke up? When the ice keeps secrets darker than its shadows. Let me tell you about Antarctica in a way they don't teach in textbooks. This isn't just Earth's coldest continent.
Eddies and wind churn freely here, whipping up violent seas in one of the Earth's roughest waterways.
It's a 5.5 million square mile vault of ice, locked and sealed by temperatures that can kill exposed skin in minutes, and winds powerful enough to flip vehicles. There are no insects here, no wildlife that doesn't come from the ocean. For months at a time, the sun doesn't set, and for the other months, it doesn't rise. Nothing should survive beneath this frozen wasteland. Nothing should even exist there. And yet, here's where it gets interesting. Since the 1950s, crude radar systems have been picking up anomalies beneath the ice, strange patterns that couldn't be explained by normal geology. Back then, scientists dismissed them as equipment errors, interference from the ice itself, or natural mineral deposits playing tricks on their instruments. But as technology improved through the Cold War era, those errors became harder to ignore. By the 1970s, researchers had mapped buried craters and mountain ranges that defied explanation. Some looked like impact scars from ancient asteroids. Others showed geometric patterns too precise to be natural. And in one particular region of East Antarctica, instruments detected something that made absolutely no sense. Magnetic interference so strong it distorted readings for miles around.
These days, bits of Antarctica are controlled by different countries, including Australia. We have a big slice down here.
The source? Something metallic. Something massive. Something that appeared to be generating its own energy signature from deep beneath the ice. What could possibly do that? The race nobody talks about. While the world focused on the space race, another competition was unfolding in silence at the bottom of the world. The United States, Russia, and several European nations had established Antarctic research bases. But they weren't just studying penguins and ice cores. They were mapping what lay beneath and competing to be first to unlock its secrets. The 1959 Antarctic Treaty supposedly made the continent neutral ground, reserved for peaceful scientific research. But here's what that treaty also did. It froze all territorial claims and created a system where major powers could operate with minimal oversight. Translation? The perfect cover for research that governments didn't want scrutinized. By the 1980s, fragments of Antarctica's buried landscape had been mapped, but the region showing the strongest anomalies, the Gamburtsev subglacial mountains, remained largely unexplored. The readings from this area were so bizarre that most teams avoided it entirely. The few who investigated reported equipment malfunctions, unexplained power drains, and compass needles that spun uselessly in circles. Then China decided it was time to find out why. China's calculated gamble. In 1984, China launched its first Antarctic expedition aboard a refitted cargo ship that was never designed for polar waters.
China's icebreaker Xulong has neared the country's Great Wall Station in the Antarctic and started.
The crew, a mix of scientists, engineers, and naval officers, had almost no experience with sub-zero conditions. They battled storms that nearly sank them, faced temperatures that froze their equipment solid, and slept in tents that turned to ice overnight. But they survived, and in just 40 days, they built Great Wall Station on King George Island, China's first permanent mark on the Antarctic map. That was just the beginning. Over the next 3 decades, China built 4 more bases: Zhongshan Station in 1989, Kunlun Station at Dome A in 2009, and later, Taishan and Inexpressible Island stations. Together, these outposts formed something foreign analysts found deeply suspicious: a near-perfect triangle around the Gamburtsev subglacial mountains, the same region where decades of radar had detected impossible readings. Was this coincidence? Or had China deliberately positioned its research network over one of Antarctica's deepest secrets? The echo that changed everything. Fast forward to 2018. At Kunlun Station, the highest, most remote, and most technologically advanced of China's Antarctic bases, a research team began using long-range radar arrays to penetrate deeper into the ice than any previous mission. Their goal was straightforward: map the bedrock composition beneath nearly 2 miles of frozen terrain. What they found was anything but straightforward. The radar pulse they sent down should have scattered off rough geological layers, creating the messy, irregular patterns that characterize natural rock formations. Instead, something 4 kilometers below the surface reflected the signal back with impossible precision. The returning wave showed a clean, smooth curve, the kind of reflection you'd expect from engineered metal, not ancient stone. The technicians assumed malfunction. They recalibrated everything, replaced transmitters, adjusted frequencies, and scanned again. Same result. They moved the equipment several kilometers away and tried from a completely different angle. Same exact curve, same location, same impossible precision. That's when the fear crept in. Because natural geological formations don't create perfect arcs. They don't reflect radar signals like mirrors. And they definitely don't maintain identical signatures from multiple scanning angles across a 4-kilometer stretch. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. Every time the radar swept across those exact coordinates, magnetic sensors near the vehicles spiked violently. Power systems flickered. Communications with Zhongshan Station, hundreds of miles away, cut in and out. And when they stopped the radar, everything stabilized. Whatever was down there was reacting to their presence. The team sent the data to Beijing. Within 48 hours, analysts at the Chinese Academy of Sciences confirmed what the field crew already suspected. The anomaly, now designated G1, was inconsistent with any known natural formation. Its geometry suggested hollow sections inside a dome-shaped structure roughly the size of a football stadium. Some experts theorized it was a meteor encased in ice. Others proposed a mineral-rich cavern. But several engineers reviewing the data reached a different, chilling conclusion. The structure reflects as if designed to do so. Beijing's response was immediate and unambiguous. Confirm the source. The next phase would require drilling 4 kilometers straight down into the ice. And once they broke through, nothing would ever be the same. Descent into the unknown. The modified thermal drilling platform arrived at Kunlun Station during the depths of Antarctic winter, when temperatures plunge so low that hydraulic fluid freezes in mid-air and exposed metal shatters like glass. The crew worked in 2-minute rotations. Any longer, and frostbite became inevitable. Progress was agonizing. The drill descended meter by meter, melting through layers of ice that hadn't seen light for millions of years. But with each meter gained, the electromagnetic readings grew stronger. What began as faint background noise evolved into steady pulses, repeating every few seconds with mechanical precision. Too regular to be natural, too deliberate to be random. Then, at a depth of nearly 4 kilometers, everything changed. The drill's grinding roar suddenly shifted to a sharp, hollow echo, the unmistakable signature of empty space. The team stopped immediately and lowered a fiber optic camera into the borehole. What appeared on their monitors made several of them step back from the screen. A curved metallic surface, smooth and reflective, coated in frost, but unmistakably artificial. The camera's light bounced off it in clean, perfect bands. For several seconds, nobody spoke. They just stared at the impossible thing they'd uncovered 4 kilometers beneath the ice. The footage was transmitted to Beijing for verification. Within hours, analysts confirmed it matched the exact coordinates of Anomaly G1. This wasn't theory anymore. It wasn't speculation or instrument error. The structure was real, physical, and unlike anything in the geological record. Beijing immediately authorized expansion of the borehole. Heated plasma cutters widened the tunnel until cameras could move freely. The expanded view revealed the full scope of what they'd found. A dome extending beyond the frame of the video, embedded in crystal-clear ice. When technicians scraped samples from its surface, the material refused to melt even under direct heat. Portable spectrometers showed no match to any known element or alloy. That's when someone noticed the irregular voids in the ice nearby, pockets that shouldn't exist in solid glacial formation. When they extracted core samples from these areas, they discovered something that made the metallic dome seem almost mundane by comparison. The ice around the structure wasn't empty. Something else was frozen there, something that appeared to be organic. The ice that wasn't dead. The first samples looked wrong from the moment they surfaced. Instead of the clear, solid ice cores they expected, several sections appeared cloudy, like fog trapped inside glass. Held against the light, they revealed tiny pockets of liquid sealed within the ice. And floating in those pockets were thin, thread-like strands that looked disturbingly biological. In the lab tent, a researcher placed a slide under a portable microscope and adjusted the focus. As the image sharpened, he increased the light for clarity. Then he froze, hand still on the dial. The strands were moving, not drifting, not shifting from vibration, moving deliberately, twitching, curling, as if responding to the light itself. He backed away and called for confirmation. Another scientist tried the same procedure. Same result. Every time the light brightened, the filament stirred, reaching toward the beam like something seeking the sun after an eternity of darkness. What they were witnessing shouldn't have been possible. These samples came from 4 kilometers down, sealed in ice for potentially millions of years, in an environment so hostile that even extremophile bacteria shouldn't survive. Yet here was something not just alive, but reactive, responsive, almost aware. The team ran genetic sequencing tests. When the results came back, the room went completely silent. The DNA fragments matched nothing in Earth's biological database. Not bacteria, not fungus, not archaea, or any known extremophile. The sequences were complex, structured, almost engineered in their precision. One scientist later described them as reading like code rather than evolution. Several team members quietly suggested the pattern looked artificial, as if it had been designed. Trying to rationalize the impossible, the lead researcher proposed a theory. Perhaps the metallic dome had emitted low-level heat or radiation for eons, creating liquid water pockets in the surrounding ice. These microenvironments could have preserved ancient life forms in a state of suspended animation, protected while the rest of the continent froze solid. It was the only explanation that fit the evidence, but it didn't make anyone feel safer. Then things accelerated in a direction nobody anticipated. When the sample broke free. Within 48 hours, sealed vials containing the samples began showing pressure increases. Bubbles formed and disappeared inside the containers, impossible in a sealed system. Under magnification, the filaments had multiplied visibly, spreading through the liquid like roots through soil. 2 researchers reported strange skin irritations after handling the samples, rashes that looked like chemical burns, accompanied by a metallic smell that lingered for hours despite repeated washing. More disturbing, small patches of rust appeared on nearby tool trays that had been completely dry. The team ordered immediate containment and secured all materials in reinforced cases for transport to the surface. But as they prepared to evacuate, radiation counters in the lab began climbing steadily. The readings were weak initially, but growing stronger each time the containers were moved, as if the samples were reacting to motion, to disturbance, to the presence of living humans nearby. The lead scientist ordered emergency evacuation. The cases were loaded for immediate transport. That's when the containment failed. During transfer, one of the reinforced vials shattered, not from impact, from internal pressure. The glass split with a sharp crack and a mist of liquid hissed out before anyone could react. The substance hit the snow and began spreading immediately, creating a faint shimmer across the ground that glinted under the floodlights like oil on water. When technicians tried to scoop it up, it melted into the snow and continued moving on its own, rippling in irregular lines toward the excavation site. Surveillance footage later showed the discoloration spreading with apparent purpose, flowing directly toward the borehole as if drawn to the source below. At that exact moment, sensors positioned near the dome registered something that turned blood cold. Low-frequency pulses began echoing through the ground at perfectly timed intervals. Each pulse was followed by a sharp spike in temperature readings from 4 kilometers down. The rhythm was too steady to be geological, too deliberate to be natural. It sounded like something buried in the ice had just switched on, and it was responding to what had been released above. The awakening. The systems began failing in sequence. Power monitors fluctuated wildly. Compasses spun in complete circles. Useless. Overhead drones suddenly veered off course and crashed into the ice despite clear skies and no wind. The backup generator cut out, leaving only emergency lighting. The communications officer tried to contact Zhongshan Station. The message came back scrambled by interference so heavy it sounded like static screaming. Every subsequent attempt failed. The source of the disruption was coming from directly beneath them, from the dome. Then the ice moved. The first tremor was subtle enough to dismiss as wind vibration. The second was not. A deep, rhythmic pulse rolled through the ground, mechanical and deliberate. It repeated every few seconds, growing stronger, like the sound of massive gears turning deep underground. This wasn't ice cracking. This wasn't geological. This was something waking up. The field crew outside stood paralyzed. The lead scientist transmitted an emergency recall to Beijing and ordered immediate evacuation. Before anyone could move, the entire excavation site erupted in light. A blinding flash burst from the borehole, followed by a wave of heat so intense it melted through several meters of snow and ice in seconds. The air temperature jumped more than 20 degrees in moments. Steam rose in thick columns, and the surrounding ice began collapsing inward, creating a massive depression around the drill site. In the control room, instruments recorded a sudden spike in radiation levels. Then, impossibly, the readings reversed. Radiation dropped to 0, then flipped into negative values, as if energy itself was being absorbed out of the surrounding environment. Scientists who later reviewed the data said this was physically impossible. Energy doesn't work that way. It can't. Within minutes, all signals from Kunlun Station went dead. Satellites recorded massive thermal distortion around the site. The entire area appeared to sink several meters into the ice, leaving behind only a faint heat signature and complete radio silence. No further contact was made. According to later accounts, some crew members may have escaped before total signal loss. Official statements from Beijing denied any casualties and immediately classified the entire incident. Every log, every transmission, every photograph, sealed under state security orders. But the story didn't end there, because weeks later, a video began to circulate online. The leak that couldn't be stopped. The footage was only 47 seconds long. It showed the borehole surrounded by floodlights, a camera shaking as alarms blared, and the metallic dome half visible beneath layers of frost. The final seconds captured a flash of light so bright it consumed the screen before cutting to black. Within hours of appearing online, the video vanished. Every platform, every mirror, every share, replaced by error messages and broken links, as if someone with extraordinary resources was systematically erasing it from the internet. But they were too late. Thousands had already downloaded it, archived it, analyzed it frame by frame. Researchers who examined the clip confirmed the location matched Kunlun Station's coordinates exactly. The equipment, terrain markers, and landscape were consistent with Chinese research photos taken before the expedition. And analysts noticed something else. The explosion spread in a near-perfect circle, originating from below rather than above, suggesting the blast came from inside the ice, not from any surface equipment. Beijing's official response came swiftly. Glacial gas release caused localized heat spikes and equipment loss. No fatalities, no ongoing danger. The statement was brief, detached, and conspicuously vague. It avoided any mention of the radar anomaly, the biological samples, or the weeks of total communications blackout. The explanation raised more questions than it answered. Then came the leaks. Anonymous emails reached journalists and scientific outlets containing fragments of internal mission summaries. They described the same explosion but included details missing from the official account. Magnetic pulses, temperature reversals, and a rhythmic pattern recorded seconds before the blast. One message claimed the dome hadn't been opened by the scientists. It opened itself, the sender wrote. Another suggested the energy surge was triggered the moment the microbial sample was exposed to open air, as if breaking containment had sent a signal down to whatever waited below. None provided definitive proof, but every message ended the same way. Stop asking questions. International scientists demanded answers. The Chinese Academy of Sciences refused further comment. According to some reports, expedition members were quietly reassigned or removed from public rosters entirely. what officials called administrative restructuring, and critics called a cover-up. The question that won't go away. Joe Rogan dedicated an entire podcast segment to the incident. He played the leaked clip frame by frame, asking why something so innocuous would be scrubbed from the internet with such speed and totality. He reminded his audience that Antarctica has always been the center of unexplained military operations and classified research. He cited Operation High Jump, the 1946 U.S. mission that deployed thousands of troops and a naval task force to Antarctica for reasons that remain partially classified to this day. He mentioned ancient maps showing ice-free Antarctic coastlines centuries before modern discovery. He interviewed explorers who described the continent as a place that resists human presence in ways that feel almost intentional. Rogan didn't claim proof. He asked the questions everyone else seemed too afraid to voice. Why would a simple gas release trigger radiation spikes, magnetic interference, and a total information lockdown? Why would China erase the names of an entire research crew if nothing had gone wrong? Why delete a 47-second video that supposedly showed nothing unusual? His questions reignited global interest and forced the mystery back into public consciousness. By year's end, two versions of the story existed. The official version: a natural event destroyed equipment and ended the mission. Unfortunate but unremarkable. The unofficial version: something ancient beneath Antarctic ice had been disturbed, and whatever awakened that day has never fully gone silent. What's really down there? If the unofficial story is true, we're facing questions that challenge everything we understand about our planet's history. How long has that structure been buried? What civilization, if any, could have built it? What were those biological samples? And why did they respond to light after millions of years in darkness? And most disturbing of all, if breaking a single containment vial triggered a response 4 kilometers underground, what happens if something breaks through from the other direction? China hasn't returned to Kunlun Station for deep drilling operations. The site officially remains under geological assessment. No research papers have been published about Anomaly G1. The crew members haven't given interviews. The data remains locked behind state security protocols that classify it above most military secrets. That level of secrecy isn't protocol for a gas pocket. It's what you do when you found something that could destabilize the world if it got out. Some researchers believe we're looking at evidence of a pre-human civilization, possibly millions of years old, that existed before the ice sheets formed. Others think it could be extraterrestrial, a crash site or outpost from something that visited Earth long before recorded history. A few suggest it might be something else entirely, a sealed containment facility built by whoever or whatever came before us, designed to keep something dangerous locked away until the ice melted. And now, the ice is melting. Antarctica is losing ice mass at an accelerating rate. Glaciers that have been stable for millennia are fracturing. The frozen vault that has kept this secret sealed for millions of years is beginning to crack open. So here's the real question. What did China really uncover beneath that ice? And more importantly, is it still down there, waiting in the dark, responding to signals we don't understand, growing stronger as the ice above it grows thinner? What do you think is buried under Antarctica? A lost civilization? An extraterrestrial installation? Or something far stranger that we don't have words for yet? Share your theory in the comments below, because whatever the truth is, it's becoming harder to keep it frozen.